So I've lived in San Diego pretty much my whole life, and we've got beautiful weather, amazing beaches, and it's just a very laid back city. But there's definitely a few downsides that you'll never know until you actually live here. So today I'm giving you 6 reasons why you should never move to San Diego. Hey guys, my name's Nenad and I'm a top 15% agent, and I've helped lots of people buy and sell homes here. So if you have any questions, just send me an email or a text, or you can even give me a call over on my personal number. Alright, so it's never really been cheap to live in San Diego, but now we're at the point where it's one of the most expensive places to live. And the biggest reason why is because we have some of the highest housing prices. So it doesn't matter if you're renting or if you buy a house, because prices are high across the board. Now the median price of a detached home is just under 1.1 million. And in some of our coastal cities like Carlsbad and Encinitas, you're gonna pay closer to $2 million or more. And renting a 1-bedroom apartment that's in a decent area, it's gonna be at least $2,500 a month. Plus you gotta add all the utilities on top of that. So electricity is anywhere from $150 to $250 a month. Then there's your internet, water, sewer, and trash fees, which is going to be an extra $400 or so a month. Also, you definitely need a car if you live out here, and between our high gas prices, car insurance, and registration fees, plan on paying another $500 a month. But one of the best things about San Diego is that we get such great weather, so there's actually a ton of free things to do around here. There's surfing, biking, hiking, or you can just go hang out at the beach, so you don't really need to spend a lot to enjoy San Diego. But going out to restaurants or maybe checking out a show or even just grabbing coffee, those are all going to be much more expensive here. And don't forget about your gym membership, groceries, childcare, and all your other basic day-to-day expenses. And speaking of childcare, it's about $1,500 or more a month here, which is almost 75% more expensive than the rest of the country. So yeah, once you add everything up, you definitely get a little bit of a sticker shock. But at the same time, a lot of people are willing to pay a premium to live here. Hey guys, if you could just real quick hit that like button and make sure you subscribe, it really helps the channel grow and I can make more videos just like this one. Now, another thing you should know is that our housing inventory is still pretty limited. And a big reason why is because a ton of people refinance when interest rates dropped, and now they're sitting on these super low 2 to 3% rates. So now 60% of mortgages are below 4%, and these people are in no rush to sell. So we have less inventory, fewer choices for buyers, and whenever a really good property hits the market, it's still pretty competitive. But it's definitely not like it was a few years ago, and sellers are way more open to negotiating now. So buyers actually have a lot more leverage today to maybe lower the purchase price or even get credits for repairs. But with homes that are priced right and they show well, those still end up selling in the first couple of weeks. And the homes that you see sitting on the market are either overpriced or they need a ton of work, and we're seeing a lot of price drops on those. So if you find a house that you like, try not to wait too long before submitting an offer, especially if there's a lot of interest on it. Now, another big problem is that there's just not enough new housing being built. So we're at about 90 to 100,000 units short of what we should have, and that gap just slowly keeps growing. And part of the problem is that San Diego is basically boxed in. We've got the ocean, the Mexican border, mountains, and military land all around us. So there's just not a ton of places left to build on. And when developers do end up finding land, the whole permitting process is super slow and it's gotten very expensive. There's zoning rules, environmental studies, and a lot of community pushback that they gotta work through. So it's just a huge process here, and it ends up taking years to get a new project approved. So I think that low inventory is basically the new normal in San Diego, and if we don't start building a lot more housing around here, then it's probably gonna stay that way. Okay, so let's talk about something that's just been getting worse and worse, and that's the traffic. Now, it's not like in LA or in Chicago, but it kind of feels like we're getting there. So your commute is 100% something that you want to think about, because during rush hour, the freeways are almost always packed, and now that 20 to 30 minute drive is closer to an hour or more. And unless your job is super close to your house, you're going to be driving a ton out here, because San Diego is really spread out, so you pretty much have to drive everywhere. Now, we do have some public transportation, but most people don't even use it, and over 90% of people end up driving to work. So we're a very car-centric city, and that's why most families here have at least 2 or 3 cars. And on top of the traffic, the parking is also getting worse. Now, it's still not that bad in some of the more suburban areas, but the closer you get to central San Diego, the worse it gets. So North Park, Little Italy, and even by the coast in La Jolla, you'll definitely want to have a designated parking spot. So I always tell my clients to think about where they're going to be spending most of their time. You know, where's your office? Where the kids are going to go to school? Where do you want to hang out on the weekends? And if you try to live as close as possible to some of those places, well, then you'll end up spending way less time on the road. All right, so this next one's a big problem in San Diego, and that's our wildfires and home insurance. So our wildfire season is only getting longer, and that means our fire zones are getting bigger and bigger. And once your property is designated to a fire zone, it can really affect a lot more than just your home insurance. So some lenders have much stricter loan requirements for these properties, and some buyers don't even want to buy these houses. Like in some parts of East County or up in North County, there's a good chance you'll be paying way higher insurance premiums. Or what's even worse is that they could just flat out deny you coverage. So if that's the case, you'll have to get the California Fair Plan, which is our state-issued fire insurance. Now, this doesn't mean you need to completely avoid avoid these properties, but you should definitely do your research. And make sure your real estate agent knows where the fire zones are and start getting insurance quotes right away. Or you can use this CAL FIRE website and you just look up the address on here and it'll show you if it's in a high fire area. But just make sure you double check it with the insurance company, because I've had times where it shows as a high fire area on this website, but the insurance company didn't have it as one. All right, so late summer and early fall is our fire season, and it's not super uncommon to see smoke out in the distance somewhere. So there might be some poor air quality for a little while, and some neighborhoods might even get an evacuation warning. Also, our utility company might shut off the power when it's super windy out just to keep fires from even starting. Thankfully, big fires don't happen very often, and most homes in San Diego are going to be pretty safe. So it's not something you have to be super concerned about. But if there's a lot of open space around your house or you're in one of those high fire zones, then just make sure you're prepared. All right, now let's talk about taxes. And I get it, it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but you should have at least a basic idea before you move here. Now, the first ones are state income tax, and this one will probably hit you the hardest, especially if you're moving from a state with no income tax. So let's say you make around $90,000 a year, well then you're paying about $5,000 in California state tax. But if you look at somewhere like Arizona that has a much lower tax rate, well then you're paying about $3,000 more in California. And property taxes are another one, and in San Diego you're paying about 1.2% of the assessed value per year. So if you buy a house at $1 million, then you're paying about $1,000 a month just in property taxes. But one good thing we have here is that they're capped at a 2% increase, so your property taxes can't skyrocket overnight. Now, some neighborhoods also have what's called a Mello-Roos tax, and if you don't know what that is, they're basically an additional property tax. So they help pay for nearby infrastructure, so schools, roads, parks, really anything along those lines, but each neighborhood has a different rate. So make sure you know exactly what it is for that specific neighborhood. But Mello-Roos taxes are only in certain neighborhoods, usually ones that are newer, so just make sure that you double check. All right, another one's sales tax, which is at 7.75%, but some cities in San Diego actually have a higher rate. So in Chula Vista and Escondido, it's at 8.75%, and down in El Cajon, it's at 8.25%. And these rates can change over time because local cities can actually vote to raise their sales tax. And our gas prices are some of the highest in the country, and a big part of that is because there's 70 cents of taxes added onto the price. All right, now most people don't realize this before moving to San Diego, but we basically get this long stretch every year where it's super overcast. So people here call it May gray or June gloom, and instead of waking up to sunshine, you're actually waking up to gray skies. And the closer you are to the water, the worse it is. So if you don't want to deal with that for a few months out of the year, then consider moving more inland because it's not as bad over there. And if you live 15 to 20 minutes east of the ocean, it'll be completely sunny, but totally overcast by the water. So in Del Mar and Encinitas, you can go weeks without seeing much sun. But it's good that it never gets super cold in San Diego. So most of the time you just need a light jacket, and it's usually in the 60s and 70s. We also don't get a ton of rain, so it's honestly comfortable all year long. All right guys, so I gotta say, San Diego is really such a great place to live. But just like anywhere else, we have our own challenges. But if you have any questions, or if you're thinking about buying or selling a home in San Diego, then I'd love to help. And even if you're not making a move right at this second, still make sure you reach out because there's a ton of things we can work on. And that way, when you're ready, everything will be way easier. And also make sure you watch some of my other videos, or maybe just watch this one right up here. They're all super helpful and they're packed with a ton of information. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.